Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, joined by Sam, EJ, and Anthony, and we're going to be diving into the tight end class here real shortly. But Anthony, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I am well. Always happy to be here on a Friday night. I've got some new friends that I've worked with both you guys before, but I don't think we've done a Friday night together, so that's fun. But yeah, we're going to talk some tight ends. Interesting group. Some names that could potentially be impact players in the NFL. We'll see how it goes out, but yeah, happy to be here. Always excited to talk some ball.
So EJ, it's like I just saw you last night.
I know, right?
I'm sorry the Eagles did not pull it off.
Oh my God. Embarrassed by the likes of Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbull. I can't.
EJ, if it makes you feel any better, my mother is like a lifelong Philly sports fan, and so I was talking to him like, between the Phillies and the Eagles, you're gonna get one win. You get one win.
No, we didn't get none. We didn't. Oh my God! Yesterday was the worst. It was like throw it in the trash. I don't want to. Oh, I can't even talk Phillies anymore. And I got the Sixers on in the background watching them play preseason, so they can go 33 and whatever. Life is good. Life is great, fellas. Right? Life is great.
Oh, and Sam, welcome back. It feels like it's been a while since you've podcasted, but it's only been like 5 weeks, maybe 6. But it just feels like forever. But it's good to have you back. Thank you for coming on.
No, it's great to be back. It might have been honestly like week 0 or before week 0 before I was on. So feels like a lifetime. We're about like a third of the way through the season already.
Yeah, and we're going to be breaking down tight ends the next 3 Fridays. But before we dive in and talk about today's group of players, each podcaster is going to have a few minutes just to talk about like how they view a blocking tight end versus a receiving tight end and how that grades out. And Sam, I'll let you kind of kick off that part of the discussion.
Yeah, so my philosophy with tight ends has always been that if you're trying to draft one, you have to have one that has some versatility for you. Because you think about what is generally the top tight end in the NFL in terms of like what's their peak production. I know it's changed a little bit in recent years because you get guys like Brock Bowers come in and kind of shakes things up a bit. But generally, what's that level of top tight end production look like for like a Pro Bowl top 5 tight end? And it's like 800 yards or so, like give or take. And think about, well, what's the trade-off between like taking a tight end in top 10 versus taking like a receiver in the top 10. Because a receiver is going to get you. You draft a like top 5 receiver, you're getting 1,400 yards versus the top 5 you might be getting 800. So to me, you have to be taking a tight end who can give you versatility and give you some level of benefit in the run game as well. So if we're among like the elite tight ends when you're projecting forward, you need to take a guy who can give you a little bit of both. That's how I generally view it. And so there's always going to be a cutoff for tight ends who are more slot dominant versus guys who can give you both inline and maybe some slot versatility as well. Again, there are like exceptions to that rule. You get some like Brock Bowers, who isn't the best blocker in the world, but it's just a really freakish athlete. It's basically like a combination of like a running back playing tight end kind of. Mm-hmm. But that's generally how I view it, my philosophy. So the guys who are slot dominant players are going to have a bit of a cap on them where you're looking at more of a 3rd round type range for those type of players, where it's, okay, you're taking a bit of a bet on a guy. He's going to be more of a niche maybe isn't the right word, but he's going to be more of a situational player for you. And if you're looking at a guy who flipping it over, you want someone who can do both, but you're looking at primarily like just a guy who's going to specialize for blocking for you. I guess you could take that guy in the 3rd round, but generally I'm looking more specifically day 3 for that type of player because there are always multiple guys like that in the class. That's a player you draft, keep on your roster for 4 years. When he's up for a contract extension, you let you turn over that spot kind of keep it rolling. So that's kind of how I approach the process. You're trying to find that middle ground. There's only a couple of guys who generally fill that in an ideal way. But other than that, like tight ends is a role that's a little bit capped for me when I'm evaluating. You get a lot of guys who peak in that 3rd round range as receivers and as blockers primarily in like the day 3 type range.
EJ, how about you? When you're looking at a tight end, how do you balance out a pure blocking tight end versus a pass catching tight end?
Pretty much I look at what you're best at. Like what is your, like most of these tight ends, they like say they major in receiving and minor in blocking or vice versa. So we got to look at, see what's your what's your strong suit? Are you like, if in the case of like Brock Bowers, he's a major in receiving and a minor in blocking. Not that he's a bad blocker, but he's just not an inline blocker. He's not somebody you want to leave alone against a against an edge rusher. But blocking on the move, angle blocks, and everything like that, he's perfectly fine with that. As I tried to block my cat, but I didn't do well. But the thing is, you just got to look and see what they're best at. You look and see how the teams are using them. How formation wise, are they H-back? Are they lined up in a slot? Are they lined up in line? Ideally, you want a guy to be proficient at every aspect. But, nobody's perfect. Nobody can really do that. There's not a lot of guys that can do that. But you basically, you look for what they're best at, because tight ends are they're asked to block whenever you get any given down. They're asked to be a receiver at any given down. They're asked to be like a lead blocker on any given down. So they're asked to do a myriad of things. So they have to have that type of versatility and that type of body type to be able to pull off most of what they're going to be asked to do. So basically, I mean, you look at the tight end and you watch the film and you let the tight end tell you who he is. So if you see somebody and they're good in space, they're good coming as a slot, they're good coming off the line and running routes and everything, they're more of a receiver. So you're gonna play them accordingly. You're gonna play them as a receiver. If you have to ask them to block, it's gonna be the type of blocks where he can be successful at. You're not gonna put him against a 250-pound edge rusher or anything like that. You're just gonna ask him to work on double teams. You're gonna ask him to block on an angle or something like that. So basically, you look for what they're good at, and then you work around that, and you adjust your evaluation around that.
And Anthony, how about you? How do you look at the tight end position when you evaluate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what these guys are saying. I think every tight end needs some sort of baseline ability as a receiver and as a blocker. Sam alluded to like Brock Bowers and how he's just like not the greatest blocker in the world, but he's so special as a receiver and an athlete, it doesn't really matter. But even Brock Bowers, he's not a total liability as a blocker. On the other side, I think of like for your Bills, like they just took Jackson Hawes this past year, who was like blocking is his game. That's what he does. That's what he does well when he's out there. And there are roles in the NFL for guys who can do one thing as a tight end very well. If you're a good blocker, you can come in more 12 and even 13 personnel looks and be able to, contribute on the offense. If you are that more of a receiving option, kind of like a Juwan Johnson type of guy, you're not really a blocker. You're not going to be used as a blocker, say in the run game, but you can get out there and create mismatches as a slot receiver, even potentially lining up out wide. So there, as a tight end, there are different ways that you can contribute and get onto an NFL roster, but it's how you're able to develop both as a blocker and a receiver that could make you potentially one of these, the kinds of top guys that we see, like, the prime Travis Kelce, and now Tyler Warren is kind of able to do both at a pretty high level. So that's kind of what I look for is, where is their baseline at both receiving and blocking? And then maybe if they fall short in one of those, okay, but are they good enough in one of those areas to still make a roster and to still contribute in some way to an NFL team?
And I want to jump in there really quickly. I think, like, from my perspective, the receiving ability actually raises the ceiling for the prospect, but the blocking ability grants you the longevity.
Yes.
And there's a lot less volatility with a guy who can block well, because with those receivers, you have some bad receiving seasons. You might have bad quarterback play a year. There's a lot that can fall off, and injuries can really impact your agility, your ability to separate, that kind of stuff. But if you are Matt Spaeth or you're Jackson Hawes and you constantly have that power and that natural strength to your build, that will stick with you. And you turn that into a 6 to 8 year NFL career. So even though you might not be the best receiver in the world, you might outlast those guys in the league because you have something that you do really well, and you might be a high level player at that. So it's not that the receiving ability is inherently going to grant you a better career than someone who's primarily a blocker. But I do think that teams are chasing that kind of explosiveness generally, and they want to have that upside athletically. So I think that that's going to push those players to get drafted earlier, even if that means that they may not last as long in the NFL as like a traditional inline blocker.
And Sam, I actually think that's a really good point to make, is that I think we see the trend that the pass receiving tight ends get drafted earlier.
Mm-hmm.
At least two of you have mentioned Jackson Hawes, and his blocking has been noticeable with Buffalo. But it also should be pointed out in the come from behind win against the Ravens. It was a pass that was downfield to Hawes that put him in the red zone for the ability to, I believe, to take the lead or to tie the game there in the last 2.5 minutes. That may have been his only catch of the game, but he was able to execute in the passing game. So we're not talking about a fantasy. This is not a fantasy football tight end podcast, right? We're scouting for what is the player bringing to the NFL team. Today's group focuses more on the blocking tight end. And then next Friday and the Friday after, we will have other tight ends that might be less proficient blockers. But why don't we jump in and talk about these tight ends today? So we're going to talk about Tanner Arkin from Illinois, Miles Kitselman from Tennessee, Marlin Klein from Michigan, Jack Endries, and that should be Texas. I forgot to switch that graphic. Joe Royer from Cincinnati, and Oscar Delp from Georgia. So, Sam, do you want to kick off Tanner Arkin from Illinois?
Yeah, so Arkin to me, among the guys on this list, is like the most traditional inline type blocker of the group. Some of these other guys have a bit more 3-level receiving ability than Arkin. I don't necessarily view Arkin as being this high-level receiver. If you're drafting this guy, you're drafting him to be that difference maker in the run game. Is at least how I view him. Like a really nice thick frame, like I said, traditional size for inline capabilities. He drives his way through contact. If he gets a linebacker or a DB, he's going to displace those guys and move those guys downfield. And he is a player who can hold up against some more traditional edge rushers in the run games you need him to. Really good grip strength too when he goes and strikes. Good arm length as well, I believe. And he's got like that wide enough base where he can actually give you something in pass pro when you have an edge rusher working on him. So he's got some mobility in there. I think he's got really strong hands on difficult catches as a pass catcher, but I think there's some athletic limitations here. Like he doesn't have the most full route tree. He's not going to stretch the field for you. I wouldn't consider him like a dynamic or elusive athlete. So I think there's just going to be some limitations there as far as what he's going to give you as a receiver. But in terms of the size profile and some way he showcases as a blocker, I think there's quality there for him to be this day 3 selection. I do view him primarily as just a day 3 prospect, in my opinion, for this guy. But he does what he does really well, and gets one of those guys who could have that extended career because he is so well built for this particular role.
EJ, where are you on Tanner Arkin right now?
Yeah, this is a guy that's gonna play in the league for 10 years simply because the fact that he can block. It's always a home in the NFL for somebody that can block, and that's what he does. And he only has like 22 career catches in college, so I mean he knows exactly what he is, and he's pretty good at what he does. I like the fact that like Sam said, I like the fact that he's got the play strength and he's got the grip strength to sustain his blocks. But I like the way Illinois uses him. I watched him against, I forget who I watched him against, but they used him. They lined him up as an H-back, and they used him in a split zone motion. And he's the tight end coming across the formation. Instead of usually with that play, the tight end goes and turns around and he's catching a pass in the flat. Tanner, he doesn't turn around. He's just acting as a lead blocker for the quarterback. And the quarterback go ahead and runs in for the touchdown. So he's more so he's like fullback / H-back / tight end, but he's a tremendous lead blocker. You can see the body type. He's got the wide body. He's got the big strong arms. He's a guy that you trust against the edge rusher by himself. If you have to leave him by himself in blocking. One thing I noticed is sometimes he will shoot, like he needs to shoot his hands first and foremost. Sometimes he'll meet a incoming rusher with his chest, which is a testament to him because he's got the anchor to absorb that type of hit from somebody running directly into him. But he's got strong hands. He should use his hands at all times. So that way he can control these blockers more. On the blocking on the move, he's solid blocking on the move, but there is a little bit of the accuracy goes down as far as hitting his target when everything is on the move. If it's something right in front of him, he's gonna knock somebody's head off. But when he's blocking on the move, he still will hit his target, but it'll be a piece of his target. He won't hit it cleanly that way, and it won't be like a clean block. I've seen guys just like slide off of his blocks just because he didn't hit the block cleanly. But that's something that can be coached up. That's easily correctable. But he is your pure blocking tight end. Somebody's going to draft him on day 3. He's just going to stick on somebody's roster for years to come. It may not be with the same team, but he'll bounce around the league. But his role is clearly defined, and his role is always in need at the next level.
Anthony.
Yeah, a lot of similar feelings. Like of all the blocking tight ends that we're going to talk about tonight, this is definitely the most blocking tight end that we're going to talk about. He actually has the most blocking reps of so far this season of anyone we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah, and you see it there. Like he's 6'4", 265. His role in the offense is clear, basically acting as either a sixth offensive lineman or as a lead blocker. You know, that is his role in the offense. And I will say, I don't think he's like as devoid of athleticism as you might think. Like I agree with Sam. Like it's definitely not his strong suit. And I think he does definitely have athletic limitations. But he does have, he has a 3-sport background. He was football, basketball, and track in high school. He even they did a fake punt last year. I saw a clip of, and he took the snap and ran it like 30 yards on a fake punt. So he is able to be somewhat of an athlete. Again, it's not his game. He's not going to stretch the field vertically. He's really not even going to win. Yeah, I think he literally has like 5 receptions this season so far through 5 games. So he is never going to be like a top receiving option in an offense. We just talked about him, but he kind of is probably going to fill like a Jackson Hawes kind of role in an offense in the NFL. But he, to EJ's point, definitely could have like an 8 to 10 year career. And I could even see him like being a special teams contributor as well. So yeah, somebody that I would be happy, late day 3 or priority free agent. I'd be fine getting him in the room, getting him signed and having him contribute on the roster in some way, because he'll be able to do that.
Well, Max, thanks for hustling home and hopping on. So thank you. You've come on. Tanner Arkin was the first tight end we were going to cover, but if you wanted to take a minute, Max, before you give what your assessment of Tanner Arkin is, of explaining like how you evaluate a tight end, either like tight end versus slot receiver or any of that. Everybody else on the podcast had a chance to do that before we started Tanner Arkin. The floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. To me, it's simple. I think that if I don't think that you can project to play in line at the NFL level, at least passively, sort of think like a Hawkinson or Sam Laporta as like the bottom level of that. Is my audio okay? I don't have my mic right now. Hold on.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really far away from the microphone.
I am kind of far away, so I can bring it closer. I'm just using the laptop, so traveling right now. So, yeah, I do not. Is it good? Is it better now?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, basically, if the first thing I'm kind of looking to see, at least as a minimum, is whether you can play in line at the baseline level that you can be credible and not a huge limitation there. So I'm looking at guys like Sam Laporta or TJ Hawkinson kind of at that inflection point. If you're worse than them as a blocker, you're not able to play in line just like without tipping your hand somehow. If you're better, then that's obviously a plus. So for me, I'm looking at that because like if you can't do that, you can't. You're imposing a lot of limitations on the offense from a personnel perspective, right? Like you only have 11 guys, and you're going to have 5 offensive linemen. You're going to have quarterback. You're going to have a running back. You're going to have 2 receivers. You're going to have 1 tight end. And so whoever that last guy is going to determine your personnel grouping almost all the time outside of short yardage and goal line. So what you do with that position carries quite a bit of weight. And so to me, like if you're going to be a tight end in that spot, if you're going to be like a tight end body type, you need to be so freaky as a receiver, route runner and mover in general that like I have to be comfortable playing, like running my full offense, including all of my 11 personnel stuff, my true drop back menu with you in that role. And so that's a hugely high bar. And so I think that a lot of people think with flex guys that oh, you can just put him in that role. But like the fact of the matter is like that's like the Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce line. Like if you are even Dalton Kincaid, who's truly one of the better receivers at the tight end position, is not at that bar. So he only plays at the 40% snap share for Buffalo because they put him out there in 11 personnel and 3 wide, then their run game's cooked. And you can't operate. It's so hard to operate that way. And so they'd rather have 3 receivers, lean on them as pass catchers, and then have the tight end be like a tertiary guy like a Dawson Knox, but also give them credible in my blocking. So that is all to say that like it's very important to me. And I'll waive it for a guy like Brock Bowers, but that's it's how you that. So that's how I evaluate it. You need to hit that bar, and then if you barely hit that bar, like you better be a really really nice receiver. I think a good example of that is like Colston Loveland. And I do think he's going to be a good player. He's got to adjust the blocking in the league, which has been a challenge. But to me, he's like 6'6", 250, has good length, and is strong enough that like I think he can get to that LaFleur Hawkinson level. And then with his receiving, he becomes a plus at tight end. And if you're not going to be a great receiver, then and that kind of leads us into the conversation of Arkin, you need to be a monster. You need to be you could be an AJ Barner who is useful as a receiver, or like a Dawson Knox who is useful as a receiver on play action and as a check down guy, not really as like a separator in the drop back game. Or you can be like a Brock Wright who is not going to catch balls at all and is coming out there in some 11 personnel situations where you really want that true line blocker and to have the receivers carry your receiving, because that's the nice thing about 3 wide is that you don't need the tight ends to truly do that. Or in like heavy packages and a ton on goal line. So that's what I see Tanner Arkin being in the league. You look at his frame; he's 6'4", 265, as you can see there, and that's huge. I think that like the weight proportions at tight end are kind of something that get a little bit misunderstood. Like Kyle Pitts being 6'6", 245 is too thin, but if a guy is 6'3", 245, he's not. Like Trey McBride is 6'4", 245, he's not too thin. 6'4", 265 is enormous. It's giant. If he were 6'5", it's like 275. So that's like 25 pounds on Zach Ertz, like on a per square inch kind of basis. So yeah, he's thick. The problem I have with him, and I haven't watched him that much this year. I haven't really watched him that much at all. I can't get to all these guys, especially with how much I'm keeping track of the NFL tight ends right now. Is that like, especially in the USC game, which is the one I have watched from this year, is that like he's not controlling defenders. Like he's blocking well, but like if you're 6'4", 265 blocking college kids, like, you need to be rag on them. You need to look like Jackson Pollock. So I mean, I think that he does a great reputation as a blocker, and I've seen him in the past do it, so we'll see. And obviously huge, but like that's his upside.
Cool. Well, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, EJ, the next tight end we were going to talk about is Miles. Is Miles Kitselman from Tennessee. Can you tell us what you saw in him?
Yeah, I watched him against Mississippi State. From what kind of stood out to me, they use him as a number 3 in trips. They line him up as an H back. He looks best as a receiver, pretty much against zone coverage. As a blocker, I think he could stand to get a little bit stronger as a blocker. Hand placement and the way he shoots his hands, I would like to see a little bit more aggressive. I think he's, as an athlete, I think he's a little bit, I would say by NFL standards, I'll say he's average to below average as an athlete and as a mover in space and everything like that. But I think I think he'll be looked at more of a receiving tight end than a blocking tight end. I think he's a guy that could be a tight end too. He can sit down in zones. I'm not sure how well he'll do against man coverage as a receiver, but he's a guy he'll give you an honest effort blocking. But he's going to have to get coached up on his technique. I think he's going to have to get in the weight room, get a little bit stronger, because he's probably going to start off as like a second tight end or something like that. I don't see him with starter upside right now, but there's a baseline for him to play in the league, but he's going to have to iron out some kinks in this game that I've seen.
Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, so Miles Kitselman, this is somebody who he was a junior college kid, transferred from Alabama in 2023. He's been with Tennessee now for a couple of years. I read that he models his game after Gronk. And I'm in no way saying that talent-wise he is Gronk, but you can certainly see the sort of stylistic similarities. This is a big body target. He works the middle of the field really well, I think, as a receiver. He has a really sizable catch radius. I think he's able to use. He has a big wingspan. I think it's like over 78 inches, and he is able to use that to be able to catch the ball off his body really well. He had 0 drops in 2024, but he has 3 this year already. I don't know. I admit I haven't seen all the drops, so I don't know if they're, more fluky or if they are like indicative of a problem. But I do, from what I remember watching him over the summer, I thought his hands were pretty reliable. EJ kind of touched on it. I think he is a good blocker and a willing blocker. Again, he has the frame that you want of somebody to be a good inline blocker. I do think his technique kind of fails him at times, so he'll need to work on that. I also don't think he's not going to separate very well. He can win contested catches and he can win in the middle of the field well, but he doesn't have the top line speed to be able to separate vertically. And to separate consistently, I think. This is also somebody I find it interesting that Tennessee has played him as like a fullback quite a bit this season and in years past. So he doesn't have the body type of someone you would consider to be like an H-back by any means, but Tennessee utilizes him that way, and they also utilize him as like a lead blocker in that way. So potentially that's something he could do in the NFL. But I like him as a big body catch option down the field and somebody that can also line up for you in line and can also work off of play action, kind of what Max was saying about somebody like Dawson Knox. I think he can win that way as well. So I like Kitselman as like a borderline top 100 player right now. I'd probably lean early day 3, but I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he could crack the top 100. But yeah, there are some things that I think he'll need to clean up before he gets to the next level.
And Sam, where are you on Miles Kitselman right now?
Yeah, I think he's a 5th rounder. I could see a team falling in love with him because of the height, weight, speed combination. I think he might test okay in terms of speed testing, but in terms of blocking, like he gets a body on a body, but he doesn't move people. And that to me is an issue at that size. Like you would expect him to be more dominant with that kind of mass to his frame. and he just isn't. Like, he just does not move guys off the line at all. Even against linebackers, it's a lot of stalemating, but not really creating the level of displacement you're looking for in the run game. I do think it's a pass catcher. He gets off the line well. He's got decent enough speed. It's not anything special, but for someone that size, he moves fairly well. Really, to me, like, if you're looking for the best blocking moments for him, it's perimeter stuff where he's really just overmatching everyone out there by a large margin. But when you're true inline stuff, when you're having him pull, it's just not the same. Like, he's just not moving guys off a lot, trying to angle guys out of the way. But I think he got ball up a couple of times. Like, Georgia linebackers really did a good job working off of his blocks and making run stops. So to me, it's a concern where he's just not going to be someone who's going to separate a lot for you as a pass catcher. And then in the line, he's not playing to his size right now when he has blocking opportunities. Anthony, you haven't seen the drops. 2 of them were against Mississippi State. Both of them resulted in interceptions. So it's not like not looking great right now. Like, the optics could be better in terms of that sense. I do think that there's a bit of a hands issue. Even in the Georgia game, there was like a double catch at one point. So I think he's not a natural hands catcher right now. At that point, to me, I'm looking at like a mid-day 3 guy you're drafting based off of physical traits. But in terms of the high-end output, for me, it's not there in either aspect of the game.
Okay, Max, what do you have on Miles Kitselman?
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit of a tough one just because of like all the time he spent at Tennessee, and I know that they've made their offense normal now. So that's kind of a bit of an adjustment for him because, like, in those veer and shoot systems, the tight end is actually an H-back. And so, like, there's limited, at least, true inline blocking. They use that guy's move. They're like a pure move blocker, and they don't have a tight end. So now that they've gone a little bit more traditional, especially with a lot of the stuff they run, like if you look at their run schemes previously, it's just like, so much of it is like, from a tight end perspective, you're pulling on counter, you're splitting on inside zone, you're inserting occasionally like an ISO fullback, and stuff like that. And so the technique on that is so different from blocking in line because it really is just about getting through, reading your path correctly, taking an efficient path to get there, setting up angles. It's fullback stuff. And the point of contact is really just hit them at high speeds and knock them. Inline blocking is totally different. You're really an offensive lineman at that point, so you have to use your hands, you have to gain leverage, you have to do all this stuff that's sort of tight quarters combat and control related. So that's a huge adjustment for him, and he's like you guys have pointed out, his hands are for a guy in that size. But it's such a huge adjustment for him that, like, once he spends more time learning it, he should be fine in that regard. I think as a receiver, he's not obviously he's not Tanner Arkin. Like, he's definitely a more of a plus there. I don't think he's going to be like a super serious receiver at the NFL level, but like as he develops as an inline blocker, like he can definitely that's going to give you like a solid 20 and 25 and 220 stat lines with a couple of goal line touchdowns and play a lot of snaps for you in inline role, especially as an 11 personnel tight end. Like, think of like kind of like a Colby Parkinson type role, even if they're very different players. That's better than forget it. Like, it's never going to happen.
Jim, you're muted.
The next tight end is Marlin Klein from Michigan. Anthony, do you want to kick off him?
Sure. So Marlin Klein, the first most important thing about him is he is from Germany, and that is an integral part of his scouting report. So he was born in Germany. I think he played like a couple years of like junior football there. Then he came to the States in high school, played high school ball in Georgia, then got to Michigan, and he's sort of been like riding the bench, playing on special teams. up until this season. I mean, obviously they had, like Colston Loveland was there, so he was never going to beat out Colston Loveland for the starting job as tight end one. But for somebody who relatively is pretty inexperienced, I think he flashes some really good things. So he's 6'6", 250. Of the three guys we've talked about so far, I actually think he does the best job of like actually moving defenders as a blocker and like really getting a strong grip on them and being able to move them and displace them. I watched him against Nebraska. I thought he had some really nice pull blocks, a nice pull and seal block at one point, able to get out in space and block well. He does a lot of good things as a blocker on the move. That the 6'6", 250, as it would indicate, he has some good athleticism, I think, for the position. Potentially could add some weight, but I don't think he necessarily has to. As a receiver, I think he, again, like flashes some good things. He really just needs to like continue to develop as a route runner, develop his route tree as a whole. I think he needs to work on his ball skills. I don't think his change of direction is particularly great for somebody that's only 250 pounds. I kind of feel like it could be a little better. And he just hasn't really had much production other than the New Mexico game this year, where, people kind of thought that might be the breakout game, and then he kind of hasn't really done much since. So he is definitely raw. He is definitely a bet on traits and a bet on some nice athleticism. But what he does as a blocker already, I think, puts him in like, I think he's already a day 3 guy. And if we get a little more production out of him, I could easily see him being somebody that will get interest on day 2. But he's flashed some good things already. I think teams will be excited about.
Max, what do you have on Marlin Klein?
Yeah, he might be sick. Working to confirm on that one, but like he first of all, he's definitely hurt right now after week 1. I don't know what it is, but he's hurt. If you look at his usage, and obviously just visually the way he moves is very different from week 1. It's jumped off the page. He's definitely hurt. But like this is a guy they were funneling targets to in week 1, and they just haven't gone to since. And it's pretty clear, like again, he's hurt, which sucks because he's 23. So there's a little bit of pressure to leave now. And I don't even know if he has any eligibility left after this year. I would imagine he does because everyone has a little bit of eligibility now. But yeah, I mean, you especially you look at him in week 1 when he was healthy, like he's fluid. I think he changed direction okay, but better than most guys. Like he's fluid. He's still more linear, but like as a detachable Y, like I think he can be really, really, really dangerous. As somebody who can work in the drop back game on linebackers and safeties and in the play action game, popping behind linebackers, popping into the flat. He was on the freaks list, so his athletic profile is going to be fantastic. He's big, he's raw and inexperienced, which means that there's a lot of upside as a blocker. When we kind of get the technique worked out even more, I think he gets over leveraged at times. His kind of center of gravity is a little bit too far behind him, and he'll get off balance. But like when he's kind of keeping his weight properly behind him, I think he's going to be really good. And again, he's fluid. Like we're not comparing these guys to like when you compare the receiving of a guy like this to a flex only guy, and they're similar. Like no, this guy, the receiving of an inline tight end is 10 times more valuable. So every yard that they produce is 10 times more valuable because it doesn't carry any opportunity cost. So like, and it gets them on better matchups, and it allows you to field through the receivers. So it's like it's the wholesale value of a guy like this, if he's even a credible receiver, is high. But like with his athleticism, his rawness, and how much he's improving year over year, and how great he looked week 1 just as a route runner and mover, like this guy might be sick, and I think he's going to end up underdrafted because of his injury. So I could see him showing up in Indianapolis and breaking the place, but and that may help him get drafted pretty high. But his production is not going to be what it should be. He should easily be their leading receiver right now. Again, after how he was used in week 1 and how they talk about him all off season. There's a lot of projection involved, right? Obviously, with all of that, but there might be something here that's very serious.
EJ, where are you on Marlin Klein right now?
Yeah, I watched him in the summer, and I had him listed as one of these guys that were going to break out this season. And after the New Mexico game, I thought it was going to happen. So I watched the New Mexico game. I watched him against Wisconsin. What stood out to me? I mean, obviously his blocking is his calling card right now. That's what stands out about him. I watched him against Wisconsin and Michigan, where they were driving and they were on the goal line formation, and Marlin is head up against number 31 on Wisconsin. And he absolutely stands him up, moves him out the way. Michigan scores, everybody's celebrating. So I went and looked up who was number 31 on Wisconsin, and it was a defensive tackle, and he's 6'3", 299 pounds. And Marlin Klein just stood him up like it was nothing. So I'm like, okay, we got something here. So and then against New Mexico on that long Justice Haynes run, you can see Marlin Klein. He's got somebody turned around his back. He's got the guy sealed off on that run. So part of the reason why Justice Haynes scored on that play was Marlin Klein's his seal block. So blocking is what he's. I mean, that's his super trait right now. You see when he's blocking, you see the grip strength, you see the initial power, the initial burst, and more than anything, you see the want to, you see the determination. He wants to put hands on somebody. He wants to move them out the way. He can get a little he can get his head over his toes while blocking. So he'll lunge, he'll lean on a guy a little bit, and that allows blockers to slip off of him and he'll fall forward. But that's coaching. You got to coach him up on that. But the blocking on the move, inline block. I mean, they trust him against 265-pound defensive ends. They trust him against defensive tackles. They trust him to block on the move. You can see by how they play him what type of blocker he is, because they let him block. They feel comfortable with him blocking anybody. So that's one thing that really stands out to me. He's I think and during the summer, they interviewed him, offensive coach on his staff, and they said hands down he's the best blocker in the country. And that's of course, that's coming from his own coaches and all that, but you can kind of see it. You can see the talent there. As a receiver, he's still developing. You see the athletic profile. Where he's winning right now, he's winning against zones, and in some routes that he's just not getting the ball. He's still open. He's just not getting the ball. Against mainly he's getting open versus zone. He's shown to be a pretty decent zone route runner. Against cover 3, he knows he can get the deep out. He's there for that. He can get past the second level when he's running his seam routes. And he can do. They tried to run some little screens with him as well. He can do that. As a route runner against man coverage, nobody's gonna mistake him for Justin Jefferson. So what he's doing now, you can see him. I seen him rep. He's attacking off man coverage, and he's got a little hezzy at the top of the route stem, and he can run the option routes and get a little bit of separation. And he's got that hezzy, and he's got a little stutter step that he uses. I like there's nothing special about it, but I like the fact that he's adding that stuff to his bag. So that means he's working on it. So by the time he's year 2, year 3, year 4 in the league, it may look a whole lot better. He's not going to be a natural separator, but with his size and his catch radius, he can be an efficient pass receiver. I think run after the catch wise, he's more of a lumbering power back. He's going to run somebody over. He's not really going to juke anybody, but that's perfectly fine with his size and his strength and everything else he brings to the game. So he has serious upside of being a more complete tight end. But right now, blocking is his calling card, and that's what he's good at. And the receiving end, that's coming. That's gonna develop. So he's an upside guy that I'm willing to bet on.
And Sam, where are you on Marlin Klein from Michigan?
Yeah, so I checked it out. Apparently, he did suffer an ankle injury ahead of week 2. Supposedly, he's fully healthy going into this weekend. So we'll see if that
That's great.
changes some stuff. I'm a little bit lower on him than I think most of y'all are from the sounds of it. Or maybe I'm just less willing to wait on the upside pick for a guy entering his mid-20s. I think he's more of a player who I would suggest going back to school. But granted, like we're a month into the season. Things will change pretty significantly here down the stretch. There's still plenty of games for him to kind of pick it up. But he's got really intriguing build, I would say, with quality arm length, room to add some mass to his frame. Mentioned the freaks list inclusion. I think James Foster did a thing where he charted like which schools lie the most often about their freaks list players, and Michigan was like the main offender. So I think that he's still a really good athlete, but it's still probably not as good as list out there. I think it will still test well with the speed, like straight line stuff. I think looking at him as a defender, looking as a blocker, like there was some stuff in terms of like the balance. Like Max, I'm pretty sure you mentioned this in terms of like where the balance. I think EJ got to, like the balance isn't always there consistently for him right now. Just needs to do a better job of staying, keeping a center of gravity and center of mass in a way where he doesn't fall forward and off of blocks. EJ, you mentioned kind of like using some heads and stuff. I noticed like he tries to work some stuff into his release at the top of the stem. I just don't think he's athletic enough to really make it worthwhile. He doesn't really do much for him, but I appreciate the effort. Just looking at him right now, I think like there's just some limitations for him as a pass catcher where I don't think you're going to get much volume out of him beyond like you get for like a midday 3 kind of player. Maybe he gets a little bit higher up. There's intriguing traits that I don't think have fully been fleshed out yet in terms of like the route running doesn't seem as precise as I want it to be right now. So I've just, as much as it's risky to say go back and be like someone in your mid-20s as a redshirt senior because he's a redshirt junior right now, I'd probably suggest you go back to school and see what we can do a little bit more in the passing game from him. Blocking technique is solid but inconsistent at times. I felt like there were moments where he had some really dominant reps, but also I'd go back to even like the Ohio State tape last year, and there were a couple of like really bad reps where he's getting pushed 3 or 4 yards back into the backfield by those defensive ends from Ohio State. So I think there's a bit of a give and take there in terms of like some of the guys who are non-NFL talents, he's done really well against, but go back to watch some of the guys who like second, third round talents last year, he had some issues with. So I'm leaning more like midday 3, probably go back to school for this player.
Okay. Max, do you want to kick off Jack Endries from Texas?
Yeah, I mean, he's interesting. Like, I don't know if, he's going to be like, first of all, this year's tape has been very, very difficult to evaluate because Texas can't block anybody, and so it's just been hard to it's been hard to get anybody the ball, but it's also been hard to release the tight ends because they need protection. So he's come off the field a lot because of that, and they get their pure pass protectors. Emergency, and now I don't view that the same as coming off the field. 1v1ing defensive ends in pass protection is not really part of your job description the way it is in the run game. So to me, that's okay. That's not on the Cal tape is pretty good. Certainly as a route runner, he's obviously fluid. He's got good quickness. Obviously natural hands, good feel for space. He can stretch defenders. He's going to have to be inline capable to play a lot in the NFL though, just because he's not going to be separating on slot corners in the NFL. And it's like, yeah, you have the blocking mismatch, but like a lot of these slot defenders in the league are kick-ass run defenders now, and they're like 215, 220. In some cases, like Nicky and Ward is 230. So, that's not really as much of a mismatch. So it's just a huge. You just don't want to. You want a blocking slot real receiver in there for most of your snaps, unless you're going to be like the Ravens and just run the shit out of the ball and build everything around that. So we'll have to see how he gets as an inline blocker. If he is light, I think he's probably like. Hey, he's definitely smaller than Sam Laporta, which I think. If he can get to that size, it's good. I don't know. It's the Cal tape looks pretty good, but I was like, all right, let's see what happens here at Texas. Let's see if they start getting blocking in line more, and let's see how he can evolve as a route runner. and what kind of steps he can take. We haven't been able to see any of it just because of how Texas has had to bandage their offense right now. So it's just I gotta wait a couple months on this guy, and probably maybe until next year.
Okay, EJ, where are you on Jack Endries from Texas right now?
I think he's more receiver than blocker. Like when you see him blocking, he gives you an effort, but it's not impactful blocking. Usually when you see a good blocking tight end, he's putting hands on somebody, and the guy is you move somebody. You move somebody when you're blocking. When you see Jack Endries blocking, he's putting hands on guys, but they're not moving. He's getting moved. So like I question the play strength. I think he needs to get a little bit stronger, but I think like the strength to his game is more of as a receiver than as a blocker. Not a ton of production at Texas this year, but back at Cal, he was more of, and back at Cal, he's more of a safety blanket for Fernando Mendoza. He was getting a lot of his production came against zone where he knew how to sit down his routes. He knew how to throttle down seam routes, and they schemed up some plays for him. He's good at that. He can make the contested catch here and there. But I think like where he probably needs to, he's probably going to be best as a receiving type of tight end in 12 personnel or something like that. But he needs to improve as a blocker. That's what I got from him.
And Sam, where are you on Jack Endries from Texas right now?
Yeah, I find it hard to imagine he actually declares this year. He's probably going back to school with the way that Texas is trending right now. It's just hard to imagine that he'll have the profile to come out. I gave him a 5th round grade right now. I think primarily like a more slot dominant player. He had some okay blocking reps at Cal. I feel like he was better than I was expecting going in based on like the build I saw on frames. I thought he would be worse in blocking than he actually was, but still not a guy who I'd want to play in that role too frequently. I think he's actually probably the best when getting the ball in like these low A-dot situations and kind of let him create a little bit afterwards. He tested some angles last year in pursuit. EJ brought the zone beating. He was really good in terms of finding that zone areas quickly and getting and sitting down. Looked like he was comfortable working over the middle field. Took a few hits, was able to hold on through contact. So there's some positive things here. I think he's more like this oddly built yak machine type guy a little bit versus being a player who you kind of work into like a traditional role every single week. So I think you're looking at a role player who's just not a natural separator. He's not ever going to be probably like a high-end blocker per se. Just doesn't have the suddenness to be this most consistent contributor in the passing game. So I think you're looking at a depth piece here, probably more of like a tight end 3 who you have like a situational package for every now and then.
And Anthony, Jack Endries.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a similar boat with everybody here. I have a 4th round grade on him, but a lot of the same stuff. I think he shows he has a really good football IQ when he's able to find soft spots in coverage, able to work the middle of the field as a receiver. I do think he is being victimized by what we've seen from the Texas offense so far this season. And a lot of the things, I watched him over the summer, and one of the things I wanted to kind of find out was it felt like a lot of his production at Cal were some manufactured touches that, allowed him to just be open and then make plays after the catch. So I kind of wanted to see if Texas would, if he would still produce at Texas at a high level without sort of needing manufactured touches like that. And he hasn't, but I don't think it's all his fault. I think he's a little bit of a victim of circumstance. I do think, just with the frame that he has, I do think the ceiling for him is limited at the next level. I agree with EJ too. I think he is more of a receiver than a blocker at the next level. But I do think I think he's flashed good enough stuff as a receiver and also after the catch that he can find a home in the NFL as a sort of like secondary receiving tight end option. Unfortunately, when you've kind of boxed yourself in like that, it's hard to, be that much of a contributor in any NFL offense. But he does some good things, and I'm still hopeful that he can produce more if this Texas offense gets going.
Okay. So we have 2 more tight ends to go. For everybody watching, we are breaking down some of the tight ends that are draft eligible for 2026. Sam, do you want to kick off Joe Royer from Cincinnati?
Yeah, so Royer's been a bit of experience for me. I've reviewed him last year, and I kind of came in with a 5th round grade at the time. I'm more like in the 4th round range right now. And I think with some of the things I've heard, there'll be NFL teams will be willing to consider him in that 3rd round situation, 3rd round range. With Royer, I think there's still some concerns about really how they're using him in terms of a route runner at Cincinnati. They're really not making full use of his capabilities. I think he has some really good speed and burst, but they're using him on a lot of these schemed up touches, these low ADOT attempts. So I really don't think they're fully making full use of what he's capable of as a receiver. But I think that he's got some of the flashes of like really good burst, some nice deceleration on the intermediate stop routes. I think he's got speed where he can some test some angles create after the catch. Height and arm length should meet the desired thresholds. He does relocate for this quarterback on extended dropbacks. Quick in and out breaks. I think he's more among the guys we're talking about here, one of the more athletic playmakers who's able to have more of a role as a pass catcher than the guys we talked about so far. To me, his technique as a blocker and his play strength really improved from last year to this year. That was a huge issue for me last year. I didn't think he could really block much at all in 2024. In 2025, I feel much more capable. I feel he's much more capable, where he's being able to block basically above his frame at this point in terms of his blocking strength. I think he frames second level blocks pretty well. He's able to drive through contact. He's never going to be like this super powerful inline blocker because of how he's built. But he's able to get you some reliable capability there. To me, though, he's more of a guy who you can use in limited snaps in line, and you play a lot in the slot if you transition to an NFL offense that maybe has a little bit more of a vertical passing attack versus the role he's currently playing now, where it's a lot of schemed up stuff, low ADOT, not really testing him downfield the way I think he would be used in the NFL.
Anthony, Joe Royer.
Yeah, so I have a 5th round grade on Joe Royer. This is somebody who I think he's a big physical football player. But for someone who is big and physical, I found myself kind of just disappointed in his inability. You know, we talked about Marlin Klein, where, you know, he was able to show off that grip strength and be able to move people as a blocker. I didn't really see that from Joe Royer, and I almost felt like he was more willing to be physical as a receiver than a blocker. I think he can make as a receiver. I think he can get downfield, make catches outside his frame, and be a reliable receiving option. But yeah, it does feel like I think Cincinnati is not using him to the fullest of his receiving abilities. He also just doesn't offer much after the catch, I don't think. Again, like some of the other guys we've talked about, like Marlin Klein and Miles Kitselman, I think offer you just more natural athleticism in a sort of similar body type than Joe Royer does. I don't think he's going to test particularly great either. I don't think he's particularly fast. I don't think he's going to separate particularly well at the next level. So I had higher hopes for him. And again, I do think he is a little bit of a victim of circumstance, similar to Endries, but I found myself just kind of underwhelmed when I watched him. And I'm not. It's tough for me to say like he's going to be able to be anything more than like a tight end, even tight end 3, honestly, at the next level. I would
push back a little bit there. I think the speed testing is going to be pretty good for Royer, actually. Like based on what I've heard, the testing for him on speed-wise is going to be pretty solid. And I do think we need to contextualize. Like this guy played more snaps in the slot last year than he did in line. Like this guy's not someone I view being like an inline block in the NFL. This is primarily going to be like a slot type weapon who can give you some quality inline blocks.
Max, where are you and Joe Royer right now?
Okay, in the NFL, he's not playing. he's 6'5", 250. You're not going to compete with the slot receivers that are 6'2", 215 and are giving 80% of the blocking and like 500% of your actual maneuverability. So I would just rather have honestly, like there are so many of these guys, like Chris Godwin, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Drake London. These guys are even really good. Like the power slots back in the early days of the power slot when McVay was really popularizing it, these were like dirty work guys that weren't that good. Like not only are they better than tight ends as receivers, even the dirty work guys like Jordan Whittington, like they're good receivers now. Like they have studs doing this stuff. So it's getting dark for tight ends that don't block in line at all. But regardless, like he is 6'5", 250, so he at least has a shot. I think that like he's been the way they use him is really, really strange, and it works for their offense, but it's strange. And he's one of the there are a handful of tight ends in the country that I've had my eye on that I pull my hair out weekly that they don't get the ball more. He is one of them, just because of how well Cincinnati runs the ball. It's just like it'd be so easy to just pop him on different run action stuff off of their base stuff and get him wide open for 25-yard chunks. But it's from a drop pass perspective, for every college offense that isn't one of the few that's pro style in their passing game, it's hard to get these guys the ball. It's hard to get tight ends the ball. But he should get the ball more. I think he is athletic. I think he's obviously big. I think he's big enough that he can get to a level where he's a competent inline blocker in the NFL because they use him as such a weird move blocker, which is so interesting for an 11 personnel wide zone team like Cincinnati. But like they love that leading to the perimeter stuff, and it works for him. So his technique is going to be rough in line, I think. But like I think he can potentially get there, getting 6'5", 250. So I think he can be solid. I think he's a bag of tools. Like I think there's a lot of talent there. And it's not just athletic talent, like it's real football tight end talent, real receiving stuff. Like you said, Sam, like the fact that you do envision him as a slot guy, like tells you everything you need to know about like the talent and chops this guy does have as a receiver. Even if that's going to be tough to make work in the NFL, unless maybe he figures out some stuff route running wise, and he is a freak athlete, and he's just one of those guys that shoots the move. But like he's got serious chops there, and so if you can get him into a real tight end role, like that becomes a super useful, really good player with a lot of upside. Testing is going to be big. It always is. It is for every single one of these guys, especially at this position. But it's going to be big for him. Again, he's hard to make sense of, but like as a guy, I think I can maybe put together as an NFL offensive coordinator. I like it. So he's got a lot of promise, but like the range of where I view him is very much up in the air at this point. But like I like what may be in this too.
And EJ, where are you on Joe Royer, the tight end from Cincinnati?
He's a solid player. He's a guy I want to see him removed from that Cincinnati offense. I would like to see him in a different environment. I think we would get a much better idea of really what he is. But from what I've seen, as far as his athleticism goes, I think he is. I mean, I see some. It's with him is like you see the short area quickness, you see the short area twitch and explosion. You see that with his when he's trying to block, and you see that when he starts to run. I think that's what it is. He's got I think he's got the fluidity and body control when you can see him when running after the catch. I think he has that for his size. I think he's pretty fluid. He's pretty easy mover. I'm not sure if he's gonna like blaze a 4.40 or anything like that. But I think in short areas, I think he has pretty good quickness and pretty good change of direction. He works pretty well with the schemed up stuff that they do. He shows the willingness to get yards after the catch. I think he can be. I think at the next level, like the inline blocking, that's going to be the development part of his game. That's where he's going to have to get better at. In the meantime, while he's working on that, they can use him as a move blocker. They can use him on double teams. They can use him like on those split zone blocks and all of that. Pretty much get him blocking on the moves. That way, he's not just pushing up against a brick wall. Get him blocking on the move and use his added momentum to help him, to aid him as a blocker. That's probably where what's going to buy him time until he gets a little bit stronger, gets his technique together, gets his hands together to be able to hold up as an inline blocker. But he's a guy that, he has upside as like a move type tight end, as a HB halfback type tight end. But it's just that, it's hard to evaluate him right now because they're either they don't trust him tracking the football down the field, or they just don't know how to use him, one or the other. But you want to see him, I think Senior Bowl is probably going to be big for him, to see him removed from the Cincinnati offense and into a more traditional NFL offense. But I think there's definitely talent there, though.
Okay, and the last tight end we're covering today is Oscar Delp from Georgia. EJ, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy. Get him out of that Georgia offense, because, like I said, can we see somebody target him a little bit? Get him, but he gives you great effort, a blocker. I love his blocking on the move. The word that stood out to me when I watched him was body control. Even when he's blocking, because they ask him to block on the move a lot, and his accuracy with hitting a moving target is right up there. I watched him against Tennessee, and they ran a little 2 tight end counter with him and Lawson Lucky, and he knocks the defensive back's head off and allows the Gunnar Stockton to run in for a touchdown. It's because of his block that they scored. So, and there's a ton of that on his film. I like his effort blocking. I like the overall energy that he plays with. He plays with good energy and good urgency. I would like to see them feature him as a receiver a little bit more, even if it's on the little schemed up screen plays or the little angle routes or anything. Just get him incorporated into the offense. I think there's a upside with him as a receiver, as a yards after the catch type of player. But it's just that we're not seeing it in that offense right now. But as far as the blocking, he's another guy. He can block in line. He gives you a good effort, but you don't want him doing that a ton. It'll wear him down. 6'5", 245. You got to imagine as he gets older, he'll add more weight and more strength. But you want him to he's another guy you want as a more of a move blocker instead of an inline blocker over and over again. He can do it in certain situations against certain players. He'll have that in his repertoire, but you don't want him consistently doing that. But there's a ton of upside with this kid as a receiver and continuously as a blocker.
Okay. Max, where are you on Oscar Delp right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you put a gun to my head and made me take a tight end in this class, it would be him or Max Player. He's a strong contender right now for tight end 1. I think he is in a vacuum. I wouldn't take him here because I don't have to. In a vacuum, I think he's a borderline first-round talent. I think if we look up in 3 years and see one of the 5 or 6 best tight ends in the NFL, that would not surprise me at all. He's Georgia's completely ill-equipped to get him the ball, and it's not his fault at all because he's the only tight end on their roster that's capable of pass protection, which is tough because when you're running play action, a lot of the times you are leaving 7 protectors in. So you need backing, you need a tight end. And so when you're a 2 tight end, Lawson Lucky can catch the ball. He's not a better athlete than Delp. He's not. We'll see. I think we will see that in testing. But Lucky can't protect, but he can run routes. Delp can protect. So you need one guy in there, and it has to be him. So, he's taking one on the chin there. And again, as I said earlier, right, a lot of these offenses, unless they're very pro style, Georgia's pro style aesthetically, their pass game kind of isn't. And they don't have a real, super serious drop back passer. And that's what you need really to maximize the tight end at the college level, just because of how much of their stuff comes between the numbers. And so, if you're not really making an effort to get him the ball on play action, it's almost impossible in most cases to get a college tight end the ball consistently unless you're using at least one of your receivers. And Delp is very much a pro-style tight end. He's a great linear athlete. I wouldn't be shocked if he runs in the low 4.6s. He's smooth. He can sink in and out of breaks. We see it, and so many routes where he doesn't get the ball. Which is so funny, but his linear speed combined with that smoothness and that flexibility in the hips, which isn't slot receiver level, but like as far as tight ends go, like it's terrific. He's a guy. I think he's a great inline blocker. His arms are, I think, very, very long. I think there's a good chance that he pushes 34 inches on the arms, and that's just me guessing, so I may be totally wrong. But he has great length, I think. Certainly plays like it. He's strong. That 245 just feels low. I think he's one of those guys that he just feels like he's like, if he feels like he's either 6'4", 250 or 6'5", like 250, 255. He's just, and if he's not, honestly, I don't really care. Just because of how strong he is and how he plays. Yeah, like I love this guy. I think he was my tight end one this offseason in summer scouting, and the more I watch Max Clare block, even especially from last year, the more I kind of like go back and forth. But like he reminds me so much of Tucker Kraft, except I think that like he doesn't have the same yak juice, but he is more flexible in the hips and more fluid in and out of breaks. And so like I think that like there's a real chance that we are going to see a guy who we look back on and we're like, how in the world did he not get more touches in college? Not to compare him to George Kittle, but like how we do with George Kittle and his numbers. The reality is the conditions aren't that different, and it's just they have to get him more involved. They are leaving so many free chunks on the table by not having a supreme inline blocker who can detach, get the ball, because that is so hard to cover. It's harder to cover than the F. And like I don't know, man, just like figure out with Lucky pass protecting. It's like he doesn't have to 1v1 the end. Just like leave him in there. Send this guy on a deep over on a hard play take. You have an athletic quarterback, so put in power read and pop him in the seam off power read action on like an arc. And you'll just and this guy's like he's so linear and so fast that like he'll get behind the linebackers. He'll just give you 25-yard chunks, especially with how well they run the ball. And honestly, use him in the drop back game. Start running him on like on your underneath menu, right? Like it's like sticks and over the balls and your static sort of zone beating routes, and then you work him in. Maybe he really takes to it and you can start putting him on a weak choice routes on the will, right? Like get on those wide choice stuff. And you can do that with Lucky in passing situations too, but like Lucky being somebody who cannot do what Delp does as a blocker, but is a decent receiver, is just killing his production, even though I do think he's like 10 times better. So this is like, if he were to transfer to like, there's again, so few offenses that get their tight ends ball, but like if you were at Michigan right now, for instance, he would be on the Mackey Award shortlist. He's so good. I think there's a good chance he is the best tight end in the country in a vacuum. So like, Delp is going to be, in my opinion, a guy that is like is somebody we wonder what went wrong in college, and it certainly wasn't him. He's been great for a few years now. Go watch the Tennessee game from last year. That was unbelievable. The one game they really got him the ball.
Good. So Anthony, where are you on Oscar Delp from Georgia right now?
So I will humbly admit that I was very low on Oscar Delp this time a year ago. And since then I have seen the error of my ways and have come around on him quite a bit. I do think, it feels like a theme tonight, but yeah, man, Georgia is just not doing him any favors whatsoever. And I say that, as somebody, I actually thought more of Lawson Lucky coming into the year than I did Oscar Delp. But you see it in like quick little flashes, the athleticism, the speed, the ability to make catches and then make up yards after the catch. I think he moves so well, both with the ball and without the ball. As a blocker, I do think he could stand to maybe add some mass to his frame. I want to see him get stronger in the run game if he is going to be like a true, top level tight end. But I think he is not and I don't want to sound like I'm helmet scouting, but and it's not to the level of Brock Bowers, but somebody who can win with the athleticism that he has will find a home at the next level, even if he isn't the best blocker in the world in the way that Brock Bowers has. So yeah, I see special talent. I think he's gonna test really well, and teams are gonna be willing to overlook some of the issues we've seen with his production this year. I also think if he puts on more weight, I do feel like he can get a little bogged down by contact and defenders contesting him. That can hurt him a bit, but overall, yeah, the size, speed, and athleticism is a top 100 player for me. And then when you combine that with his ability to catch the ball, his ball skills, and what he can do after the catch, I definitely think he could wind up in the top 50. The only way he doesn't, I feel like, is just if people look at the numbers. He literally has 4 catches this entire season, which sounds absurd, but
should get 4 catches a game.
That should right, exactly. He is being so not fairly treated. If he went on strike, I wouldn't blame him. But yeah, he's a hell of a talent.
Yeah, he loves his job. He loves his job. He loves the team. He's the only guy who can do this stuff for him. If they lost him, I mean, they would be so screwed in the run game. Maybe not.
Yes. Max, your audio isn't really coming through. Sam.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Sam, where are you on Oscar Delp?
I think Delp's gonna end up being my 10 and 3 when I restack my board. So I actually wrote him up following 2023 season at the time, and I gave him a 3rd round grade following 2023. So I've been pretty high on him for a while. He did have a bit of a dip last year at certain points. He had some catching issues that I think led to a bit of a dip in confidence, both with him and with the coaching staff, and then he kind of rebounded it in the second half of the season last year from that, and this year seems to be back fully on track at this point. So this is a top 100 prospect for this draft. He's really uniquely fluid and explosive player. You just don't see many guys who are quite like this at the tight end position. I think technical development in terms of the route runner needs to improve a little bit. That's not all on Delp. That's on Georgia for doing what Georgia's done lately, and which is not develop naturally physically talented athletes. And that's on both sides of the ball for Georgia as of late. So I think there's room for him to develop technically as a route runner, as I mentioned, but the athletic tools there for him. I feel more confident in him reaching that high level of caliber play than the other guys we talked about today, because he is loose in the hips. He can sink at the top of the stem. He's got the good footwork. He's super explosive in and out, breaks and off the line. He's a guy who can stretch the seam vertically. He can create after the catch and just out leverage players. He can break pursuit angles. There's a lot to love about this guy as an athlete. The speed testing is going to be really good. What I liked in terms of his development when I first scouted him back from his 2023 tape until now is I thought he couldn't block 2023. And this year I feel like you're watching him now, he's a much more developed player. Up the pass pro work. Pass pro work is amazing for this guy. In terms of compared to the rest of the class, his work in pass protection is awesome. I loved his patience on the perimeter. When they get him in situations where he's blocking on the perimeter, he is so patient going into those blocks to make sure he doesn't overrun them, to set those up, make sure he stays square and is able to frame the block correctly. So often we see guys get in space and they just want to run through a guy and they end up overrunning the block and they give an angle for the defender to get to the football. Delp is really showcasing a lot of mental development in his approach to blocking, as well as physical development in terms of getting stronger, being a more effective player in line. He's also got some football IQ in terms of how he angles his body to consistently maintain run lanes and not give ground to defenders. So I think that he's really developed mentally. Athletically, we talked about, he's just a really high-level athlete for the position who has not gotten nearly enough volume and experience to really develop to the level of receiver that we're kind of hoping to see from him. That's something that's going to have to happen in the NFL, unfortunately, because we know Georgia won't make that adjustment. I think this guy is top 100 caliber talent. It's just the question of throughout the rest of the process, how much of this will be contributed to Georgia and how much will fall back to him. I think all of us agree that's mainly on George, but we'll see in terms of like everything from interviews to all-star events to testing wise, like where that will adjust things. But right now, Delp to me is a player who's been unfortunately harmed by the school he's been at, as opposed to being supported by the program. So we'll see where it all ends up. But to me, this is a top 100 talent and the best talent we talked about today.
Awesome. So why don't we pause, take a deep breath? Max, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience? Let them know about your Remember the Tight End Substack.
Oh yeah, yeah. So about almost a year ago now, I started Remember the Tight Ends last December. It's just a Substack that focused on the position from a valuation perspective, draft, NFL, just everything, all things tight end. Mostly weekly stuff about just different stuff I noticed. Like last week, I wrote about Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, the stuff they're doing in New England. Yeah, it's just a place that is really designed to illuminate. I think a position that gets overlooked, right? And I think when it comes time to talk about these kinds of things, when it comes time to talk about the draft, I think the football world is slightly unprepared to talk about it because it's really the hardest position to understand as far as role in the offense because it's inherently fluid and it's inherently multidisciplinary and none of the stuff they do exists in a vacuum because like if you look at it that way, then if you look at it that way, there's no point to having a tight end, right? They're a worse blocker than the offensive lineman and a worse receiver than the receivers, and it's the interplay between both that is where the value is created, right? This is a detachable offensive lineman at the bedrock level, and so it especially in the spread era when running the ball barely mattered, right? Like if you look at the mid 2010s to about 2020, 2021 in the league, these run games were just like, we're going to get in the gun and run split zone a few times every once in a while just to keep defenses honest or whatever. We're going to run wide zone or whatever. And the adaptation of NFL defenses to the spread has changed everything about frankly about everything, right? It's changed everything about edge rushers. It's changed everything about slot receivers. It's changed everything about everything. And so slot defenders especially. So I don't think that the world's caught up. And I think that as far as what teams need out of the tight end position, and the fact that like you need six guys on the line of scrimmage who can block guys on the line of scrimmage, and you can't hide it. If you're hiding it and you're imposing limitations on yourself, that is license for the defense to play you like boxes because they can get away with it. And at that point, the quarterback's life just becomes so hard. And in a way that it wasn't when everyone was just playing cover 3 all the time to everything. The run was basically established for the league, for the whole league, for 10 years. And that's no longer the case. So, I want to sort of catch the discussion up in a community-wide way to what the state of play is, so that so that the uniqueness of this position can get properly highlighted and understood and appreciated. I think it's one of the coolest things in the sport.
Cool. EJ, you want to introduce yourself and let everybody know about all of the draft stuff that you do?
Yeah, basically, first and foremost, you can find me here. This is our Relevant Podcast, Thursdays at 9 and now Fridays at 7. Basically, and also like once the college football season ends, you can see my scouting reports. I do the Rogue Analytics Draft Guide. So after the season is over, you can see my scouting reports there. And you can find me on Twitter. Here's what you get with my Twitter. Pretty much, I do film breakdowns, scheme breakdowns, NFL prospect breakdowns. What you will not get: hot takes, clickbait, or rage bait. And all my opinions are film-based opinions. So don't argue with me, argue with the film. And as always, I will never, ever, ever say the word generational.
Well, Sam Teach, you're a generational podcaster. Thanks for being on the channel. You want to let everybody know about your Substack and the other draft work that you do?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Sam_Teets33. On Substack, Sports Talk with Sam Teets, we're approaching 1,000 subscribers. We're over 1,600 followers at this point, so it's doing really well going into the season. So I'm hoping to keep that momentum rolling as we go into the 2026 cycle. Right now, it's free to subscribe, so there's no charge to you whatsoever. Just put your email in, and you'll get my updates 3 to 5 times a week right to your inbox. So hoping to see you all over there. And I also write for Chiefs Wire doing their lead draft coverage as well. So doing a couple things, but you can find that all on Twitter at Sam_Teets33.
Anthony.
Yep. You can find me on X at Anthony_Russo97, posting prospect clips and usually complaints about the Jets these days. But I've also got a Substack. I do not have 1,000 subscribers like Sam, but you can find my content all about NFL draft stuff. I'm going to do a mock draft next week because I could use the clicks. And you can find me here Friday nights and Saturday evening / late afternoons. We're going to do, I think, one more draft game day thing tomorrow. And then we'll start offensive lineman breakdowns in a couple weeks. So yeah, lots of good NFL draft stuff coming from me.
Yeah, I want to thank all 4 of you for coming on. This was great. We probably ran a little bit over. Next week, it's Anthony, Sam, EJ breaking down, I believe it's 6 more tight ends. If you want to know which players we're covering, go to my Twitter, which is at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic. And every week you will see what players we're covering. To emphasize what EJ and Anthony specifically have said, nearly every podcast at the Draft Professor now is breaking down a position. So I'm going to give you the positions. So Fridays at 9, we're breaking down defensive line. Tuesdays at 7:30 is wide receiver. Tuesdays at 9, it's offensive line. Special guest Jerry Ostrowski is going to be joining us on the Draft Professor to break down offensive line. If you are not familiar with Jerry, he has started NFL games at left tackle, left guard, right guard, and center, and he's breaking down offensive linemen with us on our podcast. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. is corners, 9 p.m. is defensive line. Thursdays, you can catch EJ breaking down running backs with Andrew. Fridays, 2 more shows with tight ends. We take a break for Halloween, and then Anthony, Sam, and James Foster are going to be on evaluating evaluating linebackers. Saturday mornings, as Anthony said, will be offensive line. Sunday mornings will be defensive line. The Sunday show starts this week. The Saturday offensive line show, as Anthony said, starts next week. So we're breaking down every position with the goal to podcast about every player drafted in rounds 1 through 5. So the question is, are we scouting correctly, that we've identified the right player lists to be able to put those players on a podcast? And I have confidence in everybody at Draft Professor that is contributing to that. But we've been going here for almost an hour and a half. So for Sam Teets, EJ Holt, Anthony Russo, Max Toscano, myself, Jim Wickens at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for watching, everybody. And we'll see you on a podcast again at 9:15 Eastern with Ian Cummings to do corners. Thanks.